what specific outcomes would you hope to achieve through training in leadership and culture building?
So when I go in to work with a company or when I'm working specifically with an individual leader, the result we're hoping to get, first of all, is around leadership compassion. So the
Mhm.
first place that we have to start is what's the leadership emotional intelligence? Where are they on the sort of continuum from sympathy to empathy to compassion? Really getting to that compassionate place. And we're really looking at a shift in workplace culture and in policy, right? If it's an organization, the end game really is we want a policy. There needs to be a return to work policy for grievers, the same as you have for to work from an injury, that sets out, everything that's available to you, a menu of choices, right? Because everyone's grief is different and it's different every time. So there's, a million billion ways to grieve because all eight and however many billion of us are going to grieve differently each time we do it. So it needs to be sort of a selection of things that you can offer. And what that does is it really gives, first of all, managers who are generally wildly untrained in this area, because most people, the vast majority of us, are untrained and unknowledgeable in this area. It gives them a tool for the conversation that's going to feel awkward and uncomfortable for everyone involved. It levels the playing field. One of the main things that I find in organizations that aren't particularly griever friendly on purpose is that they have some teams that are really griever friendly because someone on it has the lived experience that has led them to make the team work that way, and other teams aren't. So you have functioning teams and dysfunctional teams, and everybody who's boots on the ground on those teams knows which is which. As you go further up the leadership hierarchy, they don't necessarily know that, but the people with the boots on the ground, they all know, oh yeah, I would never work on that team, but I'll work on this one, right? So we want to level that playing field. We want to create more equity, right? We want to create a system where everyone gets the same kinds of offers. So it doesn't depend on whether your boss likes you or not, or where you are in the company, right? There's a similar kind of offers being made to everyone. And really the wonderful ripple of all of that, of having these awkward conversations, learning to talk about emotions at work in a way that's healthy, bringing our whole humans, modeling that by leadership, having, grief 101, where we talk about grief. What are the symptoms? What's the real timeline? How long might people need support? We know all of these things. We just don't talk about them.
Mhm.
What happens is you're really showing, besides just talking the talk about how much you care about your employees, you're really showing that. And the ripple that's so beautiful is that everybody sees that in a time of crisis, you are still cared about. When you're
Mhm.
struggling, you still matter. You're still valuable. You're still part of the team. So it dismantles that whole kind of cog in the machine, sense that we still carry with us, even in really functional workplaces, right? We still have that sense
Mhm.
that, oh, I'm replaceable and they don't care that much about me. And we all have these cultural stories that we're telling ourselves, whether they're accurate now or not. That's our history thus far. And it really dismantles all of that, because if you're showing up as an organization, as a department, as an individual leader in a big way for someone who's in crisis because something catastrophic has happened or they need support, you're showing your employees how much you care. You're not just talking about it. And
Mhm.
we've made this entry into all of these conversations around grief because it's at least something we kind of understand. We sort of get happens. It's a gateway conversation. And you end up with a policy that you can expand, right? If it's working, it's cost neutral, very low cost, the things that we put in place. You can expand that out to be like, well, what if something else happens? What if you're just having a bad day? Like, we get to come and say, oh, I'm having a really bad day today. Can someone please remind me when the meeting is? Because I know I'm going to forget. I'm just a bit scattered. Sure,
Right.
let's put an alarm in our shared calendar. It'll go off now. None of us need to think about that. Right. So the other thing too is the scaffolding that we put in place, the tools we put in place technologically that help grievers when they have things like brain fog or lack of a connection with time, which is really normal, both of those things in grief for a long time. It also relieves everyone else from having to remember those things. So if you have a shared calendar with alarms, for example, and you get a half-hour warning when a meeting is coming up and then a 5-minute one because you should get to the meeting, nobody has to think about when that is anymore. We can all release that part of our brain to do, as I was saying earlier, the creative, innovative, out of the box
Mhm.
thinking that is really what humans are excellent at. And AI is not so much yet.